picture. Oh well. So, thank you for joining in on today's live stream. Today we're going to be talking about how higher interest rates actually causes inflation. And now I know this is kind of like a weird concept for a lot of people to try and wrap their heads around. But really, when you have higher inflation or higher interest rates, the idea that it causes inflation is like very obscure. Like most people are under the impression that if you have higher interest rates, that's going to slow consuming down. And if you slow consuming down, that should bring the prices down as well. But according to a lot of economists out there, and I think it was JP Morgan, I left a link down in the description to an article talking about this, who believes that the higher interest rates are actually causing higher inflation because it's keeping the inventory of homes off the market. So ultimately, the idea behind this theory is that because of the high interest rates that are taking place, people are less likely to sell their home because they are not going to be able to, like, say, buy another home with a low interest rate that they have. So they're going to stay put in their house. And that's going to prevent them from wanting to put it out there on the market, which then depletes the amount of inventory out there. And then with less inventory, you have higher prices. So what the theory behind this is that if the Federal Reserve was to lower rates, people would feel encouraged by that, being able to put their house out for sale and then say maybe go and purchase another home at a lower interest rate. And this whole concept should bring more inventory to the market, which would then lower the prices. Now, I have to argue this because if this was really a true theory that could take place, then the low interest rate environment that we had experienced for the last 10 years or more would have kept the prices of homes low, but they didn't. They drove the prices ever increasingly higher. And the reason behind that is that it ultimately comes down to the payment, the monthly payment that you can make. And now if you can make the monthly payment, then the price is going to be where it's going to be. The interest payment that you make on it is going to start determining what it is that monthly payment can be. So if you have low interest rates, right, then you have a much higher payment on a higher priced house that you can make. But if the interest payment is so much higher, then that same high priced house can't exist at that same price level, as the people just simply can't afford to make that house payment. Right? So to me, like, the lowering of interest rates isn't going to lower the price of a home. Right? It's like, to me, that's not a very, that doesn't produce the logical sense that I would assume would come to the economy from the things that I have learned. Now, one of the things that is taking place right now is the return on capital investment. Now, this starts making a lot of sense that a low interest rate environment creates a deflationary scenario, and a high interest rate environment actually causes an inflationary scenario. And it's due to the return on capital investment. Now, if you think about this, if you have, back in the early 80s, this is something that I've used for an example before. Back in the early 80s, a U.S. Treasury, 10-year Treasury would be somewhere, between 10 and 15%. So if you had $1 million inheritance, the old rich uncle dies and he leaves you $1 million back in the early 80s, you could go and buy U.S. Treasuries with that and get a pretty decent return. Anywhere from $100,000 to $150,000 a year. You could actually have a decent living just by simply loaning the government money. Well, today, if you got that $1 million inheritance and you loaned it to the government, you're going to get right around, $40,000 to $45,000? Maybe $50,000 if we're lucky here and things go up. Right? But still, on $1 million investment, $50,000, although it was a lot of money, it's not like it's earning like the $100,000 or $150,000 back in the early 80s. So even though the higher interest rates are now starting to impact the economy, the $40,000 or $50,000 is a much better return than what we were experiencing just a few years ago, where you could loan the government $1 million and get like $10,000 a year. Right? So now the return on capital investment is starting to really increase. It's not as good as it once was, but it's definitely better than it has been just recently. And so now, as people are starting to benefit from the return on capital investment, they start turning that back into the economy again, whether they're purchasing or investing in the stock market or buying, more property or doing whatever with it. That return on capital investment is actually moving back into the economy, which would then start increasing the consumption again. Right? right? If you give it time, this is what ends up happening. If you have a low rate environment, a deflationary scenario will occur as your return on capital investment begins to go negative. I mean, again, if we think back to the U.S. Treasuries being at, 1% and getting $1 million inheritance and loaning that to the government, getting a $10,000 return, by the time you actually get your money back from that, the principal and the interest on that 10-year Treasury at a low interest rate environment, by the time you get that money, the purchasing power is less than if you had just purchased the stuff to begin with instead of investing it. So you're actually losing purchasing power when you have a low interest rate environment by putting your capital investment to work at only 1% or 2% on a U.S. Treasury or wherever it's at. That low rate environment doesn't give you the capital to invest back into the economy again. So really, this is how I see it, is that the reasonings that we're seeing the inflationary pressures coming from the higher interest rates is literally from the return on capital investment that is now taking place. The longer it goes on, the more it's going to continue. Right? Now, the other thing that doesn't seem to be mentioned a whole lot is the rise of the neutral interest rate. So this is something that is really obscure because there's no chart that you can go to. There's no place that says, hey, this is what the neutral interest rate is today. Nobody knows exactly where it is or what it is, right? As far as the exact number of it. But we know that if we have an inflation expectation that is elevated, that's going to start raising the neutral interest rate. Now, the neutral interest rate itself is the rate that the Federal Reserve is neither accommodating nor restricting the economy. They're neutral, right? And now the Fed funds rate is above neutral, but they don't know exactly how far above neutral it is. They just know that they are above the neutral rate, which then makes the Fed funds rate restrictive. However, if the inflation expectation continues to elevate into the future, it's going to raise the neutral interest rate, making the gap between the neutral interest rate and the Fed funds rate diminish. If the future inflation expectation is to rise, bringing the neutral interest rate up. As it gets ever closer to the Fed funds rate, it makes it less restrictive on the economy. This is another reason why we're seeing the inflation scenarios that we are experiencing. The idea that there's going to be lower interest rates to bring house prices down, to me, doesn't make any sense at all. Like none. Like I cannot... Like the mental gymnastics that I have to run through in order to understand how it is that people are going to bring more inventory to the market with a lower interest rate environment, and somehow that's going to bring prices down as it brings more people capable of making a higher payment. Like to me, it's not going to work like that, Lower rates is going to give the ability for more people to make higher interest payment or make higher payments, or make the payments on a higher priced home. That's what I should say. And there's no reason to think that there would be a flood of inventory coming all of a sudden when people are trying to sell a house to move into another one, right? They're going to want to sell it for as much money as they can possibly get, not as little money, not to just turn it over. They're going to sell it for as much money as they can get so they can move into another home. That's the whole idea behind it. So, and bringing lower interest rates, to me, isn't going to really help the housing market and the prices from it. All right, so we got 164 people watching. We got Matt with the thumbs up. All-Nighter says, hey, hey. Johnny Midas says, greetings, Simon. Isaac, UE, really dunking on the Eclipse? Yeah, I don't, there's nothing happening, so, the eclipse is a joke. It's overcast and rainy, I need to record the final walkthrough update video on my Gary, Indiana investment journey. Yeah, you do, man. Thank you for all the update videos, too. That's the biggest cope I've ever heard. This is JP Morgan executive. Yeah, howdy, homie. What's up, Tumble? All right, Midwest Cannabis with the peace sign. What is happening with gold? Will China start a new gold standard? What's going on? Will it keep going up? Now, China's not going to start a gold standard because it wouldn't work, right? I mean, it doesn't work because there's just not going to be enough transactable gold available to the world to do that. Right? Now, I'm not saying that countries aren't going to stock up on gold, and I'm not going to say that they won't even attempt to try and use gold to facilitate trades What I am going to say is that it's not going to be nearly as efficient, and not nearly as many transactions are going to be available to people who are going to be moving towards a gold standard. And then they also have to fight Gresham's law, which means that anybody who is putting gold out there into the economy is going to lose it to hoarders, to people who are going to hoard up on that gold the moment that it hits the economy and start spending bad currency into the system. China cannot introduce a good currency. No country can. Nobody can do it. Right? Introducing a good currency means that the people who understand that the good currency is now in the system will then start hoarding it, because that's what they will do. I mean, think about it yourself. If you had a gold coin in your hand or cash, which one would you use? You would probably use the cash and keep the gold coin for yourself. Everybody would do that. Not everybody, but almost everybody would do that. So China introducing a gold standard wouldn't benefit them. Like, they want to be able to push their products out there to the world. And if they limited the amount of products that they could get out there to the world by how much gold is available to make those purchases, then they're going to end up slowing down dramatically in their manufacturing. Plus, their standard of living is now too high comparatively to places like Vietnam or even Mexico or any place else like that, where manufacturers are finding it cheaper to manufacture in these other nations. So not only would they limit the amount of manufacturing that they could do and distribution to the world because they've limited to the amount of gold that those people have, other nations out there will say, hey, we're not going to do that, and we're going to go manufacture for the rest of the world, and you can just sit there by yourself, because that's essentially what would end up happening. All right, dishes with the smiley heart face. I love it. What is happening? Oh, we already read that one. The eclipse, though, who cares? All right. Like, technically, an eclipse is not a joke, regardless of cloud cover. It's nothing to scoff at. Why, man? We had an eclipse not too long ago. What big deal is it? I mean, it was kind of cool. It got all dark around here. What was that, 5, 6 years ago or whatever it was? I mean, rich people getting free money, poor paying for it equals interest rates. Okay, well, that could also be the capitalists, and poor people are only poor because they chose to be that way, right? And now I don't want to accuse people of, that particular situation if they happen to be in it and they feel like, it wasn't their choice that put them there. I look back at my life, and every decision that I made put me exactly where it was that I was at, and so, like, when I was suffering, when I was in a bad place, drunk, broke, not doing very well, all the decisions that I had made that led me to that spot were my fault. Like, I did that to myself. Now that I understand it a little differently, I'm now postponing pleasurable things, right? So that I can then invest my money into places that are then going to benefit my future. I have to postpone the great things, the happy, wonderful aspects of life that you would spend your money on. I postpone that, put it into an investment, and then hopefully here in the few years, I won't be stressing about being poor. I mean, it's just like, there's no punishment. You shouldn't be punished for getting rich, right? And it shouldn't be looked upon as being a bad thing to get there, right? I don't want to be punished for being rich if I ever make it there one day, which I plan on doing. It's all a bunch of nonsense anyway, and their plan is working, frankly. I barely even care more. What's the point of getting mad about something you cannot control? All right, let's cruise down here to the bottom. All right. I don't think people choose to be poor. They just might not have the knowledge to do better. That's a choice. That is literally a choice. You may not understand that you need to do better. You may not understand that. Like, you think, man, I try hard. I work hard every single day. How come I can't do it? It's because you're missing something, right? And now you're choosing to miss it if you don't go out there and you look for it. Like, if you don't understand how money works, if you don't understand how things are operating, you got to start reading books. You got to start, learning about it. You got to start figuring that stuff out. There's things all the time that I'm trying to figure out, for the first time. And it's just like, man, I can't believe I didn't know this stuff before, right? Every day is another learning process towards it. And really, it's a lot of people who just have the belief that they are stuck, that they just can't do it. Like there's like it's not capable, or it's not available to them, or something of that nature. That's all garbage. That's complete garbage. It's all available to you. You can do it just the same as anybody else can. You can buy into the real estate market just like, Jason Hartman or Ken McElroy or, any of the other guys out there. This isn't a secret, right? The information is out there. They don't teach it to you unless you are willing to go and learn it. Right? There's like, you don't go to school and they teach you how to do this stuff. That's not how it works. They teach you to be a slave. And if you conform to that, then that's exactly what you're going to be. But if you understand that there is a different way out there and that you just don't understand how that operates, then you got to go and learn it. And sometimes it takes years. I mean, it may take 10 years to clear out all the bad understanding to bring in the new good understanding in order for you to progress through life. But that might be what it takes. And, some people can ramp it up a little faster than that. Other people may never figure it out. But, poor is definitely a choice. It's a mind, like, I'm not trying to say that bad things don't happen to good people and put them in a situation in which that was beyond their control. That does happen, but for the most part, most people are where they are because that's exactly what they chose to do with their life, you know, not realizing the consequences of their actions. They look back on it and they're like, man, I thought I did everything right. Okay. Z Core Alpha, thank you so much for the $9.99. United States will be divided nation states by 2027 to 2030. Divided in which way? All right. Homes are money pits for sure, and it's only in the last 20 years that they became a mania because our real economy is so weak. Too many ran into real estate. Stay curious. I agree with that, but I would also have to take it back to the Cantillon essay when they described hundreds of years ago about how the flow of money coming into the state, and when you have an abundance of money in there, there's no better sign of it than the rents and leases and property prices, right? I mean, so we can blame it on all kinds of stuff. We can blame it on politics, we can blame it on, societal changes, we can blame it on all kinds of things that are taking place out there. But ultimately, if you can find evidence of it taking place hundreds of years ago through the increase of money to a state, then you really have to also consider that this might be an economic force that has taken place and not necessarily a political decision or anything you can really do to reverse it. Like, I don't think that there's a politician out there who say, hey, I got this idea, this plan that is going to keep everybody happy, keep their retirements flowing, keep their jobs and businesses, functioning really well. And at the same time, we're going to make homes more affordable. Like, I don't find there's a capability of that. I think the only way that you're really ever going to find a way to make homes more affordable again is to make the environment capable of people, like the average person, to be able to completely build a home on their own, right? From the purchasing of all the material, to the land, to labor costs, to permitting costs, to all the things that go into it. If you can make it capable that the guy who is working a regular 9-to-5 job can pick up lumber on his days off after work and go and assemble a house and put one together for himself, then I think that you could have a bunch more inventory of homes and you could have prices coming down. But that doesn't exist in today's environment. Like, it doesn't quite work like that. Homes are very expensive to build. And if the replacement cost of a home is exceedingly high, then most likely the existing homes are going to be high as well. Like, that's just the way it's going to go down. And I don't see any reversal to this. I mean, I don't know what it is that could happen out there that's going to all of a sudden bring the capabilities of constructing a home back to the average guy, but I don't see that taking place. And so as far as new inventory comes, not much. All right. Let me rephrase. Poor people are paying interest. Rich people having money invested in Uncle Sam get their interest back. It's because interest rates. No being rich or poor. Yeah, absolutely. And see, now that's a much better way of stating that. Jason Hartman, don't trust him anymore. Homes are clearly too expensive to invest in right now. I don't know, man. I mean, I know I know real estate investors. I know people who are landlords, and I know people out there who are buying homes for that purpose. Like, I don't own that stuff. Like, I'm not a landlord. I don't have rental properties or anything like that, but the people that I know who have them aren't exactly like saying the same story that the other people are saying, that you can't afford it or you're not going to work or they're not going to pay for them or something like that. These people are buying homes, they're buying properties, and they're renting them out. All right, a home is not an investment. It is a place for you to live in, and when you sell your home, you still have to have a place to live. That's how you know it's not an investment. Every Christmas before COVID, I would give presents to people who were poor. 90% of the time, they had newer big TV than me. All right, it's already divided. Now, if you are a landlord and you have real estate or rental properties, that is an investment because you're earning income from it and you sell off your properties when you're not homeless. Uh, I choose not to be a slave to money. And that's really, I think that's probably like a really good key to a lot of this is to not be a slave to money. Somebody like the more importance you put on something, the more resistance you're going to put towards it. Like it's like, even if I was to put out videos, it's like, man, it's really important that I get like at least 20,000 views, that I have to earn this much money. I have to, all this other stuff. Well, then you're going to feel the energy of that going into the video, and it's not going to be nearly as fun. Right. And it's not going to do nearly as well. I know because I've experienced it. I mean, I've had this channel for 7 years. There's times in which that I felt that kind of energy going into the videos, and they don't do very well. Right. But when I let it go and just like, hey, just put out a good video that's talk about, some of your opinions and expectations and ideas and stuff like that that's coming from the economy, and just let go of the idea that you're going to get a bunch of views or money off of it, then the views do much better, right? So the moment that you let go of the idea of it and just move in the direction that you know is appropriate, then most likely things are just going to start flowing in a better direction towards you. And that's what's really, it's like, that's kind of the key to a lot of stuff out there. The more importance you put on something, the higher resistance that you are going to put on it as well. It's like, like anything out there, the more energy that is, and it's not necessarily energy, because like you can put like a lot of effort towards something knowing that you're going to get a return. Like you put a lot of effort and energy towards putting a project together, even building a house or something like that. The quicker, more efficient, the better that you do it, the more money that you make off of it. But a lot of times when you're working towards something that isn't a physical thing like that, but you're working more towards like literally a shift in energy levels, right? Like you want to be a better salesman. Well, part of being a better salesman is being in the game, right? And then a lot of times is being in the game is the experience of it. So the more interactions that you have, the better you get at doing sales. And the thing that I found, especially with new people who are getting into sales, they put a higher level of importance on closing the deal. And they end up driving the customer away, or making it very like kind of uncomfortable for them as they're trying to push to sign to get the deal done. When a lot of times, if you just like let it go, it's like, hey man, here's the price, whatever, let me know when you want it, right? And you just kind of like just walk away from the whole thing. They're like, hey, no, we want to do this, like, and they start coming to you like, hey, make this happen for us. And that's really like the key to a lot of things in life is like lower the level of importance, and that will like also lower the level of resistance that you have going into it. So yeah, whatever it is that you want, let go of it, and just, I don't know, kind of hard to explain, I guess. All right, moving down here. Okay, Simon, I took your advice, and kept putting out music theory videos on YouTube. My last one got 2,900 views. Nice, in 4 days. Not bad for a tiny channel. Well, good for you. Stay curious. Yeah, and keep going with it, man. Do a video every day for a year. I bet you it'll change your life. Truly, I tell you, no, a young person in their 20s, the new status symbol is the phone you have in your pocket. It's not the car you drive or the home you live in or even the clothes you wear. Huh. And a lot of young people are much more interested in their social media status rather than owning real possessions. I see it all the time. Damn, when I was young, whether whether you had Nikes or Reeboks. Yeah. Be Buddhist about it. Let go of the outcome. That's really it. Let go of the, like, you can be dedicated to the outcome, but don't be like, to me, it's like you know what you want in life, right? You want to achieve this particular thing in life, right? So you're dedicated to that outcome. But there's going to be a journey that goes towards it. That you should let go of. Just, like you know where you're wanting to go to, but you don't know what that's going to look like to get there, right? And that's really where letting go and just enjoying the journey, that's really where it becomes important, because you have to have some kind of focus on where it is you're going. I want to own a house, I want to own a business, I want to live in this particular country, I want to, whatever. You have some kind of focus out there, some kind of outcome that you want to achieve, but you don't know how to get there. You need to start moving in that direction, and the journey itself that gets you to that is going to be more enjoyable than the actual outcome itself, right? Everybody, they might look at it and go like, oh wow, man, you've really achieved a lot of stuff in your life, and you'll look back and go like, yeah, but it was the experiences that got me there, right? That's what was really more important about it. And you'll find that the outcome itself was like, although it would probably be cool, it won't be nearly as exciting as the journey that got you there. uh Cruising down here. I wasn't here to hear you talk about your title, but I heard some Goldman Sachs strategists say the same. Not sure I'll buy it. Wall Street wants their easy money back. Yeah, and that's kind of what I see as well, is that I just don't like, I don't know how it is that they could come up with that particular theory towards it, you know, knowing that it's an inventory level thing, right? And so if you have, like, I understand, like, if you have more inventory coming to the market, then that should bring prices down as supply and demand, supply demand forces start to take place. However, it's not just the supply and demand to a cash customer, it's supply and demand to the amount of people out there who are demanding. And this is the thing, like, if you had a fixed amount of demand, right? And then all of a sudden you brought more inventory to the market, well, then the demand would meet that supply, right? Or the supply would meet the demand. That's how I should say. However, if you bring the interest rates down, the supply of demand, not the supply of inventory, but the supply of demand, the size of the demand out there will begin to grow, right? So now you have to balance out supply of inventory, right? So inventory meeting the demand. Well, if the interest rates are coming down and the demand is getting bigger, then the demand to the inventory is going to cause the inventory prices to move up, because the inventory is not going to be sufficient enough to meet the increased amount of demand when the interest rates come down. Does that make sense? Like, if demand would stay still, if it was fixed, right, and you added more inventory to the pool of demand that is existing right now, then yes, I would agree the prices would come down. But the idea of lowering interest rates will increase the demand, and that's not going to bring prices down. Uh, they're not high rates, as Larry Summers says. We are way below where we need to be. Yeah, I don't know if I would trust that dude too much. I think he's a propagandist. I think it all is anyway. But all right, Nathan, what do we have to say? Think about it. When you see pictures of the Soviet Union, do you see ranch-style homes, driveways, or two-car garages? Laugh out loud. No, you see giant high-rise, high-density apartments, units, everyone in the Soviet. Yeah, and I mean, that was cool too, because they have a place to live, right? I mean, that's nice. Concrete jungles. I think you're forgetting home prices are down already quite a bit, 15% or so in real terms, even more so in the summer. Okay, but all right. We have to really take the percentages into consideration on where they went to, right? Like, my house has probably had I'm guessing $90,000 come off of the increased prices after I had purchased it. Even with $90,000, which is, I mean, at the time, it was probably close to 20%. Like, that's how far, like, my house from the high prices after I had purchased it, because they just shot up like dramatically after that. The high price that it had peaked out at, 20% has come off of that price. 20%. Like, my house price has dropped 20% from its peak. It's still about, I think last time I checked, it was still about $45,000 more. The Zillow estimate is still $45,000 more than what I had paid for it. This is after having 20% come off of the high price. So considering that the down payment I put on the house, which was quite significant, I am so far away from being underwater on this house. Even with a 20% drop in the price from its peak, I'm still not even close to being underwater, right? I could still sell the house for a significant profit just 2 years later, right? So we have to think, like, just because there's a 15% drop, we have to think about where that 15% drop is coming from. Right? Over the last couple of years, there hasn't been a whole lot of homes being sold, right? High interest rates really backed off on the mortgage markets. You can see it because the mortgage lenders out there were getting laid off and losing their jobs, and the banking industry was firing all these people, right? Because there just simply wasn't as many mortgages being written. Well, if there's not as many mortgages being written, then over the last couple of years, there's not that many houses that have been selling at that high price. See, a lot of people are like, oh man, these prices are way up there. What's going to happen? What are all these people going to do when the prices start to fall? Well, most people aren't sitting in that position of purchasing a house in the last couple of years with those high prices. Most people are before that, like me, right? Even though people told me how in 2 years, how much I was going to be underwater, how I failed, how I was going to go into foreclosure. They said all these things. Go back and look at some of the comments on my videos of it. Terrifying comments. People scaring the hell out of me, man. Just got into my head. But I went through with it anyway. Right? Put me in a wonderful position. There's no way I could buy a house in my area today. Not now. Not with the interest rates at the level that they are. I would not be able to buy a house. My house that I'm living in right now, I would not be able to buy it today. Right? So now I think about that. If there's not that many houses that have been sold over the last couple of years, and the prices have dramatically moved up over the last couple of years, even if they were to come down, you're only talking about a handful of people out there really who have purchased homes in the last couple of years who are going to be affected by that. Everybody else is still sitting well under, that position in which that if the prices come down, they would be, terribly affected by it. So again, it's like, talking about percentages, from what level, from where at? Is this after, a 15% decrease after a 20% increase? Harry Dent is entertaining. Not sure I see what he sees. Yeah. You could have invested in a farm growing fruits, vegetables, and you would have beaten inflation. Enjoy the lazy river of life, Simon. There you go. I will, Benny. All right, cruising down here the ways. People underestimate how much banks are willing to work with you. If you run into trouble, they want to get paid. Yeah, and something else that I thought was pretty interesting, and I was hearing about this being a lot more popular, and that is assumable loans. Right? So, like, for example, I have a house with a 3 and just under 3.25, 3 1/8 mortgage rate to it. That's something that you can sell. You can sell that mortgage off to somebody else, right? Now, banks don't like to do it, and I guess it's a real pain in the ass, but there is a part of most loans that are written out there that somebody else can assume your loan. Now, think about that for just a second. If you have a 3% or less interest rate on your mortgage, and you have a house that you can sell that mortgage with it, now think about how much that you could sell that house for if you could give that mortgage with it too. Right? That's a very valuable thing to have. Somebody would have to, take out a 7% mortgage, but yet they can assume yours. So think about how valuable that could be, and how many people out there have houses that they could sell like that. Most people don't realize that that loans are assumable by somebody else. Uh, the interest paid is a good return on investment. Yes, but they can't go any higher. People's wages aren't going up as much as prices did. Hey Simon, hey everyone, hey Brody, what's happening? I'm late, catching up at 2 times. All righty, man. Yeah, we'll probably be out here for another maybe 5-10 minutes here. All right, exactly. If wages do not keep up with inflation, the net result is that the population becomes poor and they cannot afford the same lifestyles before. Multi-generation loans like in Europe. Yeah, I mean, I can see that happening too. Tax lien on real estate is the way to go. Kind of hard if you got a Jesus, some words. But if you don't, you can make a lot of money ripping poor people off. And honestly, this is why the World Economic Forum already sees that happening. Hence the article in the future, you will own nothing and love it. And I think I think owning nothing and being happy is like, I don't get that. Like, I personally, the first time I heard that, I kind of giggled at it. It was just like, okay, whatever. I mean, I find that to be one of the most amusing statements that I have ever heard. You'll own nothing and be happy. It was just like, okay, well, I already don't really own anything or much or have a lot. So I'm already there. Like, I don't own anything really. I own a mortgage that I have to make payments for the rest of my life on. So that's kind of cool. I mean, I guess I got a place to live. That's nice. So I don't really own it. That's not mine. All right. So I don't own that. I'm still fairly happy. I'm cool with it, man. Like, that doesn't scare me. The new world order, economic forum, the elitist, whatever out there, they do not scare me. I am not scared of those people. Like, I'm like none. Like, I have no fear of that. And I like, as I hear people like, oh man, they're gonna come and destroy your life and ruin everything and all this stuff, and I'm like, man, you occupy your thoughts with that? That's what you occupy your thoughts with? Is that kind of thing? And I'm like, man, don't you have better things to think about? Like how to make money, how to like, build networks, how to do stuff like that. Like you're worried about New World Order takeover? Weird. Yeah, like I don't have time for that. There was a time that I did. I listened to that kind of stuff a lot, and it just put me in a depressive mode, and I never was able to actually benefit from any of that knowledge, so I just don't pay attention to it much anymore. All right, own your property with water, own cows and chickens, own Bitcoin, and be happy. When I heard that, I started doing a spring clean of all the junk I've accumulated over the years. Yeah. I own a 2000 Honda Accord. That's it. Good for you, man. Like, I got, this 99 Explorer, and I got the Toyota, and I got the S10, and I got some tools. Like, I like having my tools. That's kind of important to me. Yeah, the whole World Economic Forum thing is a scam. I don't know if it's necessarily a scam as much as, I mean, I guess it's part of the credible threat. It's part of the propaganda, to get people to behave in a particular direction. And I think that's probably a lot of that. So true. For example, there is this guy who's running for president who found a way to part people for $59 for his Bible. I thought that was brilliant. Here you are, you could sell a book that you didn't write, and there's zero consequences from, like anything that comes from that. It's just like, I thought to myself, man, that is so brilliant. Like, I want a book that I could sell, but I mean, to sell a book that somebody else had already written, man, I that was genius. Um, a Bible that you could go to a bookstore and buy for like $10. Yeah. Everybody available to people, especially once it became clear that their original approach wasn't having its intended effect. All right, here we go. Let me go back up here. Also, why did the Fed use the approachable or the approach of lending to bank instead of making the liquidity more direct? Yeah, see now that's a very interesting question there, Brody, but that's probably the idea behind the Federal Reserve and when they were initially set up is that people were flipping out because what the problem with it was is that they said you are going to monetize the debt, right? And they were like, the Fed was like, oh, no, 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 that's not what we're going to do. We're not doing that at all. In fact, there was a really great congressional hearing from like back in like the 30s or something that talked about this very thing and how they were like, well, we're going to monetize this part of it, but it's not really monetizing the debt because, we're not selling treasuries directly to the Federal Reserve, right? The Federal Reserve has to go through the banking system. They have to go out to the open market and buy treasuries that have already been purchased. And so this isn't monetizing the debt. The debt has already been purchased, and we're purchasing the debt after it's been purchased, right? So if the Federal Reserve was to print up money, go right to the government and say, here's a bunch of money, give me the treasuries, that would be monetizing the debt. That's illegal. That's against their charter. They can't do it like that. And so it was set up from the very beginning that the Federal Reserve would be limited on how much they could actually monetize that debt. Now, of course, it's gone off the charts, and that's what they do is they monetize the debt. But the original establishment of the Federal Reserve was the idea behind that was to not allow that very thing to take place. And they had this huge congressional hearing saying, if we continue down this path, this is exactly what you're going to do. And the Fed was like, oh, no, 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 that's not right. That's not right at all. But of course, that was right, All right. I feel sorry for any person who invested or bought that stock. The company is overvalued by thousands of percent. What are you guys talking about? I don't know what stock it is. We'll just move on. All right. It's the people who are working 2 or 3 jobs who are keeping the job market afloat. Well, I mean, I think it's the people who are working 2 or 3 jobs that are keeping the rents elevated, keeping the house prices moved up, right? They're the ones who are, driving the inflationary scenario. Is all the people who are working as many jobs and making as much income as they possibly can. Because you think about it, if you have a regular 9 to 5 job, right, and you're trying to live in an apartment building, right, but 50-60% of the people who are in the apartment complex also have side hustles where they're making money online, they're doing DoorDash, they're doing all kinds of other stuff. Now you, in your 9 to 5 job, has to compete against the 9 to 5 jobs that are out there, plus those people are making extra income on top of it, now gives them the ability to afford that higher apartment price. So now you, sitting at a 9 to 5 job who should normally be able to just afford the apartment, can't because now your 9 to 5 job is competing against people who have side hustles that are going on. You see what's happening? That's why, that's what I had to figure out for myself, right? 9 to 5 wasn't going to cut it. It'll get you your life. It'll pay for your bills. It'll, get you to scrape by, but it's not going to make your life good, right? And if you want your life good, then you have to do all kinds of other stuff to try and bring in other incomes and other forms of other avenues of cash flows. And that's the only way you can do it because so many other people are now doing that. I mean, if you were in a competition of people who were only working 9 to 5 jobs, then things wouldn't be like this, right? But you can't do it like that anymore. As much as you want it to be that way, it doesn't work like that, All right, Americans' life standard will go way down relative to their other countries and their poor ancestors. All right, what time is it? Alrighty, guys, I gotta go. My lunch is over. I'm gonna read one more comment and then we'll call it quits. The system is broke. Late stage capitalism. I don't think so. I mean, if we had capitalism, then you could blame it on that. But since we don't have capitalism in this nation, then you can't really blame capitalism for the problem since it doesn't exist. All right, as inflation keeps going up, it will be harder to keep the job market afloat. This is why people have 3 part-time jobs in the first place. Is Biden overly blamed for these problems? I don't know why you would blame Biden. Like, I don't know why you would want to blame Biden. And here's the thing about blaming Biden for all this stuff is that by simply accusing or pointing the finger at somebody and saying, hey, they're the problem right there, then you should be able to, by that logic, point at another person and say they can fix it. Very dangerous position to put yourself in, because there's nobody out there who's going to fix your problems, right? Especially when it comes to the problems with the economy that you are facing, because the position that you have put yourself in is the problem, not the politician that is out there, right? They're going to do the things that they do. The economy is constantly going to change and evolve, and you have to be in a position in which that adapts to that. Right? So if you're like, no, this is the way that I am and I'm not changing, and I'm going to vote for somebody who is going to make the situation better for me, right? You're not going to get it. There is nobody out there that you can vote for that's going to do that for you, right? Period. There is nobody out there. And so even by the idea that we can point it at Biden and say he did all this stuff to cause this to be the way that it is very dangerous position to be in, because again, you can, if you take that logic, then you should be able to point at another person and say they can fix it, and they can't. So he didn't break it and he can't fix it. And that's really what it comes down to. You have to understand what it is that has taken place so that you can position yourself to be the most profitable, prosperous, happy individual that you can be. All right. Thank you everybody for joining the live stream today. We have 225 people watching with 102 likes. Go hit that like button right now as soon as you hear this. And thank you so much for the $9.99 in super chat. You guys are always so very generous with the channel. Thank you very much. Uneducated Economist, you guys let me know.